As we continue to explore ASL morphology, we need to consider how numbers are formed. Numbers play a large role in ASL morphology because numbers are used in particular signs and combinations of signs called numeral incorporations. But before we learn about numeral incorporations, we have to first understand the basics of how numbers work. You first have to understand the numbers 1 through 5. 1 through 5, as a numbering system, can either be faced with the palm backward or the palm outward. Now, you're probably familiar with the palm backward method because you learn it first. That's to show quantifiers, to show how many of something you have. I have one sister. Well, that's going to be palm back. I have 5 classes. Well, that's palm back. But actually the unmarked form, the more common form, is the palm out, which is what's going to be used for addresses, giving information. It's also often what's used in numeral incorporation, like age or time, with the palm outward method. So be aware that you only want the palm in if you're saying how many of something, 1 through 5. Now, the numbers 6 through 9 also have some variations. You'll see them just the normal formation, or you'll see those numbers bounced, 6, 7, 8, and 9, where the fingers bounce slightly during the formation of the signs. This is an area that needs to be researched if we want to understand it better, because it's not really clear as to whether or not this is a dialectical difference, an age-related difference, or if perhaps it has some morphological meaning. Perhaps there's a meaning that's different when you say 6 people as opposed to 6 people, or maybe it's phonological and it only appears in a certain context. As far as I know, there is no research on that, but you need to be prepared to see both. Now, for the numbers 15 through 25, we have to be prepared for a lot of variation. Perhaps it helps to first understand the origin of these numbers. In the original French Sign Language, this was the number 1. This is why we see this in numbers like 10, well, it's because it was 10-0. Or a number like 15, it was 10-5, 15, which eventually became 15. So that's the number 1. And the original number 2 in French Sign Language was this 2. So that's why you see it in numbers like 20 or 21. It's this older form of 2. You even see it in signs sometimes, like the sign assistant is sometimes formed with an L here, and that's because this was the first person and this was the second person. So this is the older form. Those are the origins. Then you have the traditional forms. You have 15, 16, which is 10-6, 17, 18, 19, which is like 1-6, 1-7, 1-8, 1-9, using the older forms. You'll see some variations there, so you'll see them sort of shaken. So you'll see 17 formed like this, 18 formed like that. You will sometimes see them shaken to the side, so 18 or 19. But the more traditional form is 10-6, 10-7, 10-8, 10-9. And then you've got 20 through 25, so 20, 21, 22, even though the traditional form wouldn't have had that 2, it's changed now. This is the most common form by far, the only form I know actually, 23 and 24. But be aware that you'll also see some newer forms that don't incorporate the old 2. So you'll see lots of young people who sign 23. That's not the traditional form, but you'll see it. For the numbers 66 through 99, or at least if the numbers include 6, 7, and 8 or a 9 in both the tens place and the ones place, then you have what's called a rocking phenomenon. So if I want to say the number is 69, then this is the 6 and this is the 9. But oftentimes, when I'm forming that number, I will slightly turn my hand to move to move this way if I'm moving from a smaller number to a larger number, or to move this way if I'm moving from a larger number to a smaller number. So 69 turns this way, 96 turns this way, 78 turns this way, 87 turns this way. And again, any of the numbers that have a 6 through 9 in both the tens place and the ones place can incorporate those sorts of rocking motions. With higher numbers, you have the question of whether or not to assimilate those numbers. Let's start with the example being 100. So 1C was the traditional way that was formed, 100. But over time, that second hand shape was lost and it became simply assimilated into the first hand shape. So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. And then you'll see 600, 700, 800 without assimilation. Now, for the sign thousand, you'll see the same thing. The sign thousand originally was a 1 and then down. This was an M because in French it was an M for the word thousand, 1,000, just like in French C was the word 100. So 1,000. But over time you'll see that incorporated, you could get 1,000, 2,000. Both of those happen still to this day. So it's not a matter of right or wrong as far as I know from the research, but simply a matter of difference and variation. So make sure you're assigning your numbers correctly before you move on to learn more about numeral incorporation.